Yeah, this was about 2008. YouTube, incidentally, only started in 2005. So there weren't really that many people who'd adopted YouTube by this stage. And so I uploaded these videos to YouTube, and I did a bit of a search because I thought, oh gosh, I could call myself the only street hypnotist in New Zealand. So I did a search and thought, who else is around? And then I found out not only was I the only street hypnotist in New Zealand, but there was nobody in Australia doing it either. So I thought, I'm the only street hypnotist in Australasia. Okay, that's interesting. And then I started to search more and figured out there were only really two other people that were doing it around the world. And they were Sean Michael Andrews is one of them. And another one is a guy called Brian David Phillips. And the saddest thing for me was piano. I play violin and viola. In fact, there's a violin behind me. It's all blurred out this room, but there's the violin right behind me at the moment. But what prevented me going to music school was the fact that I couldn't play piano. Now, I can read music perfectly and I can sight read music, which means if you give me a sheet of music, I can pick up my violin and I can play that music straight away. But basically, when we come to a piano, your left hand on the page is written with the bass clef. So that's the bottom part on the two lines of music. The top part is the right hand, which is the treble clef. I can sight read the treble clef. I can also sight read the bass clef. So I know exactly what my right hand has to do, and I know exactly what my left hand has to do, but I cannot coordinate the two. So that was a bit of a sticking point for me. It still is, I'd love to be able to sit down and play piano now with more than one hand. That would be really good. But instead I focused on the violin and viola because for some reason I could coordinate that. So really, it's just facts. You find something that you can do as a substitute for what you can't do. I also, in the daytime, when I'm not doing hypnotherapy, I work with, this is probably what you're alluding to, I do mental health support. So I actually do what's called psychosocial support. And I work with people who have, as an example, I've got 3 clients who are paranoid schizophrenic. And because of this, they're quite isolated. And so I really do the psychosocial support, emphasis on the social, which is just really helping them to achieve some semblance of a normal life. And I find myself really drawn to that. I actually, I lost my younger brother about 11 years ago now. He suffered from paranoid schizophrenia. Should I say he lived with paranoid schizophrenia for most of his life. He was unmedicated for most of his life just because he didn't get diagnosed until he was in his early 30s. And so the education wasn't really up to scratch. And so it was a long time before my younger brother was diagnosed. And consequently, you can call it synchronicity, you can call it coincidence, but I find myself working with people with that exact same condition. And I really enjoy it. I really enjoy hanging out with these people, maybe helping them with things that they would otherwise find difficult or overwhelming, and just really introducing them to my friends and my life. And let's just say that I really enjoy the time that I spend with my clients, whether they're psychosocial support clients or whether they're hypnotherapy clients.
Today I am introducing someone very unique, Reg Blackwood. Reg is known for being one of the pioneers of street hypnosis, famous for hypnotizing people anywhere, anytime with a natural ease that feels almost magical. And what makes his story even more inspiring is that he lives with dyspraxia. For many people, it can be a limit, but for Reg, it's its own gift. It allows him to think outside of the box, and he is able to observe people from a different perspective. He's a real reminder that difference can be a strength. These days, Reg Skills blends hypnotherapy, mental health support, training others, and stage hypnosis. He's grounded, intuitive, and really passionate about what he's doing. I can't wait for you to meet him. Hi everyone and welcome at What is Your Gift? And today we have Reg Blackwood. I just met him a few weeks back when I went to the Melbourne conference, the hypnosis one. And man, Reg is a character. And he was in New Zealand and now he's living in Australia. So I think we have a lot to learn about Reg. His story looks pretty interesting. Hi Reg, how are you?
Hey, I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me along.
My pleasure, my pleasure. All right. So maybe I would like to ask this first question. What would be the thing that you love the most in your work right now?
Right now, look, I'm very fortunate that I get to do lots of interesting and experimental things. So I've actually recently completed a run of shows at Melbourne Fringe Festival, and that was really interesting. It's actually my first Fringe Festival where I've had my own show. So I've been up to Edinburgh before and always been tagging along on somebody else's show as a comedian. But this is the first Fringe show that I've actually managed to have a show that sort of has my name.
Wow. Can you tell us a little bit what is Fringe show? Because I never heard about that. Probably a lot of people are the same.
So traditionally, most cities have a festival, an arts festival of some kind, and in conjunction with that, sometimes at exactly the same time as that, sometimes other parts of the year, they will have what they call a fringe festival. So this is where people that aren't necessarily in the mainstream of entertainment can put on more experimental shows. So generally the audiences tend to be smaller, and to compensate for that, of course, the venues tend to be more intimate as well. So having attended lots of fringe shows throughout my life, I finally got to do one where I decided what happened, which was really nice.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That's excellent. So you think you're going to do that again the following years?
Yeah, I'd love to do it again next year. I've actually got the Melbourne Magic Festival coming up next year, and I'd like to maybe do a repeat of that kind of show in the Magic Festival as well. So I just need to sit down and work out the admin.
Yeah, of course. So for our listeners to understand a little bit your background and where you're coming from, that would be actually quite good to see when everything started, because you started as a stand-up comedian. So that's quite a story on its own. So if you want to dive into that.
Yeah, look, I mean, I can go back even further, really. When I was 5, I appeared in the Stall play, and I remember everybody being really, it was something like Peter and Jane in Nursery Rhymeland. And I was Peter, and I remember everybody being amazed that I remembered my lines and I delivered my lines perfectly night after night without any problems and without any prompting. And inevitably, all through my teens, really, and then into my 20s, I was always seeking out opportunities to perform. And I always wanted to be a lead actor. And then I really realized that I was always auditioning for the lead part, and I got cast in the comedic parts. So I realized that maybe I was more of a character actor than I was a kind of love interest. So I became an actor first and foremost, and alongside that, somebody pointed out, hey, maybe you should do stand-up comedy. And a friend took me along to a comedy show, and I just loved it, you know. I mean, I didn't know what alternative comedy is. This was in the early 90s, and I thought that going to see a comedian meant that there were kind of like guys in sparkly suits telling really racist and sexist jokes, and maybe a couple of dancers on in the interval. I really didn't know what to expect. And when I discovered alternative comedy, I realized, wow, this is actually something that I could do and something that I am interested in doing. So I, at that very club, I kind of fibbed a bit about my experience and managed to get on stage there for the first time and do a 10-minute open spot, is what they used to call them. So it's alongside professional comedians, they have like an amateur spot, and you get up there and prove your worth and hopefully get paid work from that. And then leading on from that, I decided, wow, I could do this in London, which is really where the heart of stand-up comedy was at the time, alternative cabaret as it was. And so I started traveling down to London from the West Midlands, where I was born, and I got various opportunities there. And somebody said to me, you should start your own comedy club in Birmingham. So I started my own comedy club with help from the Prince Charles Youth Business Trust. So I got a grant from them to kind of put towards the comedy. Most of it went on beer and cigarettes, but yeah, we got a grant, and we were able to pay the comics to travel up, mainly comics from London, to travel up to Birmingham. And so, yeah, I originally started out emceeing those nights, and then realized, well, maybe I've got a bit of an act I can do elsewhere. So I built that act, and that's how I came into doing professional entertainment, being paid to entertain people. And emceeing, or comparing as they call it in the UK, is a thankless task. You're expected to get up week after week, sometimes night after night. And with a regular audience, they're expecting you to come up with something new. You can't just do your routine, your act that you might do in a club. So I started to incorporate a little bit of magic, a little bit of mind reading, and yeah, that's how I kind of got into that side of things as well, more out of necessity.
Was it your main resources of finances and income, or you had another job?
Yeah, so I originally was, when I first started doing stand-up, I was working in IT. I was actually a computer programmer. That's what they called it back then. They call it a software developer now, but back then it was a computer programmer. I was actually an analyst programmer, and I gave that up. Because one of the conditions of getting the grant from the Prince Youth Business Trust was that you were on the Enterprise Allowance Scheme, which was a government scheme that paid unemployed people to set up their own business. So I had to be unemployed before I could access that. So I made myself unemployed just so I could access the required funds. So so I did that for maybe 6-7 years as my main and sole source of income. So running a comedy club and also performing myself.
Incredible. And how did you evolve toward how you call that, mentalism and hypnosis? How all that? Because you were saying that you self-taught yourself basically, and you are proud of it.
Yeah. So the reason I chose mentalism over magic is because I discovered that I can't do any sleight of hand. I have very poor coordination skills, and particularly very poor hand-eye coordination and small motor skills, and fine motor skills, and large motor skills. All of those things I find quite difficult. Mm-hmm. So I sort of lean towards more of the mind magic, which didn't require any dexterity, shall we say. And to this day, that's the form of magic that I perform, because my dexterity is not going to improve. And so I worked towards mind reading effects. I still use cards, I still use playing cards, but the way that I use them might not be the way a traditional card magician would use them. And naturally that led me to be interested in hypnosis. I actually saw Paul McKenna's TV show, and I bought his book and read that he'd started out as a radio DJ and then learned hypnosis and became a stage hypnotist. And I thought, well, he's just a radio DJ. That was my arrogance at the time. And I'm a comedian. You know, I've got all this stagecraft and all this stage experience. Surely if I learned hypnosis, it would be a less steep learning curve for somebody like me. So, I started learning hypnotism. And I learnt it from several books at first. And then I learnt it by performing it on people. And once I moved to New Zealand, it took me quite a while before I actually put the two together. So I wanted to be good enough at hypnotism so that I could incorporate it into my magic or my comedy act and perform it well. I didn't want to go on stage. New Zealand, as you know, is a very small place. I didn't want to go on stage and sort of embarrass myself. So it took me quite a few years to get to the stage where I felt comfortable to actually perform it for people. And even then, I didn't start really by doing it on stage. I had a friend who ran a magic shop, and he said, there'd be great publicity for the magic shop. You should come and perform outside the magic shop. So I said, yeah, sure, I can do that. I mentioned it to a friend of mine who's he's now a filmmaker, lives in the States, but at the time he was a young guy with a camera. Yeah. And I said, you should come along and film what I do. And somehow between me agreeing to this idea and my friend agreeing to film it, another friend of mine who worked in television said, you should come on our TV show and maybe hypnotize one of the crew members.
Wow.
So I said, okay. Well, so I went on and sure enough, hypnotized one of the crew members. And during the interview, I said, I'll be out doing this on the street next week. You know, these are the kind of things I always do on the streets. Again, bending the truth slightly because I've never performed hypnosis on the streets. And after the interview aired, my friend called me. It might have even been live, actually. But my friend called me and he said, I can't. I'm not available to film next weekend. I'm actually going away. And I said, don't worry. Nobody's going to come watch anyway. And then the day before that weekend, which was an Easter weekend, he called me and said, I am here. I am here after all. I forgot it was Easter. We should go out and film some stuff. So we went out and filmed me doing hypnosis on random strangers, which at the time I didn't realize, but that was basically what people now call street hypnosis. You know, to me, it just seemed like, yeah, that's a good thing to call it because there's street magic already. So I guess it's street hypnosis.
Wow. So that was new, like worldwide or in New Zealand, this term?
So you say, yeah, this was about 2008. YouTube, incidentally, only started in 2005. So there weren't really that many people who'd adopted YouTube by this stage. And so I uploaded these videos to YouTube and I did a bit of a search because I thought, oh gosh, I could call myself the only street hypnotist in New Zealand. So I did a search and thought, who else is around? And then I found out not only was I the only street hypnotist in New Zealand, but there was nobody in Australia doing it either. So I thought, I'm the only street hypnotist in Australasia. Okay, that's interesting. And then I started to search more and figured out there were only really two other people that were doing it around the world. And they were Sean Michael Andrews is one of them. And another one is a guy called Brian David Phillips. And Sean Michael Andrews was doing it to publicize his own practice as a hypnotherapist, but also to publicize his training courses that he ran on instant inductions. And he found, approaching people on the street and getting them to agree to be hypnotized was a great way of showcasing instant and rapid inductions. And yeah, I have to agree, it's a great way of doing it. And Brian David Phillips was an American guy that lives in Taiwan. And he did it purely for entertainment. And I remember watching their videos and thinking, oh, this is great. This is really good. So imagine my surprise when both of them got in touch with me through my videos that I'd uploaded and said, So there was 3 of us that were doing street hypnosis. Actually, at the Australian conference, somebody pointed out that Anthony Jacquin, at the time, had put up a series of videos on YouTube, which was something like hypno living. So what Anthony was doing was he was saying, can I survive by hypnosis alone? And so he filmed various little sequences where he went up to people to get some food from them. And he managed to demonstrate that he could live just by hypnotizing people. So that was around the same time as well. I'm not claiming to be the very first person to have come up with the idea of street hypnosis, but pretty soon, so this was 2008, and pretty soon this was turning into a bit of a movement, so much so that I ended up doing a training course, which I filmed and sold as a DVD.
Oh, wow.
And that sold pretty well worldwide. And then when, more people started getting faster internet, I thought I'll put these videos online. So I put some of my training online and continue to this day to sort of film what I do and try and put as much of it online as I can.
So how did that evolve from the street hypnosis toward, because you've done quite a bit of stages as well. Yeah.
So really, I was getting to the point with street hypnosis where I was sort of going, well, what's the point? Okay, I'm making some nice videos, but there's only so many videos of instantly hypnotizing people. So I'd naturally developed some little routines that I would do with people. And then the guy that ran the magic shop said, we should organize a stage show. I'm happy to organize a stage show for you. We should do it. I've got a venue in mind. We should organize that. And I said, okay, but you realize I've never hypnotized more than one person at a time. So I'd only done sort of one-on-one. And so I made a note, and I remember setting myself goals very clearly that I would basically make a video where I hypnotized 2 people at the same time. Because then I thought, if I can hypnotize 2 people at the same time, I can build from that and hypnotize more people. And eventually I can work out the rest to do in the show. So I set out that day and I ended up hypnotizing 2 people at the same time. And that was easy. And I thought, oh, this is great. So then I moved on and I hypnotized 5 people at the same time. So again, I made some lovely videos out of it, and I just went, okay, I'm ready to do the stage show. And I always remember going to this venue, and I had 12 volunteers on stage with me, and I hypnotized every single one of them. Nobody went back to their seats. They all stayed on stage with me. And I remember vividly starting my first routine, which was they were all playing pianos.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, I wasn't remote controlling my sound myself like I do now. I had cues that the sound engineer would follow along with. And I made my cue very clear, looked towards the sound engineer. And there were 300 people in this venue watching this show. And I said, on the count of 3, you're all going to be playing the piano. 1, 2, 3. And he played the music cue, which was Scott Joplin or something, a piano piece. And I looked at the audience, and the audience started smiling, and then they started laughing. And I thought, oh, wow, it's worked. And I turned around, and sure enough, because I've had my back to the subjects, sure enough, all 12 of them were playing the piano. And that was all I needed. I relaxed then, and it was a great show. It was a really good show. And I recounted this story to the manager of the venue. And I said, you know what? I didn't even know it was going to work until I said 1, 2, 3, play piano. And then I looked round and they're all playing the piano. And a look of horror came over his face. And he's like, your friend had told me that you'd done this countless times before. And they went, oh, he probably meant that I'd done it on the street before, but this is actually my first stage show. And he went, But I did go back and do that venue several times. So he obviously forgave me for that little white lie.
I love that. It's very clever. I know that you are also working with people with trauma. You're working more on the therapeutic side of it, and I think it's important to maybe really explain this, because it's two different worlds, and one is magical and fun, but the other one is therapeutic. So maybe if you want to dive more into this part and how it happened in your life, how you started to be a therapist.
Sure. Look, sometimes the transformation, people do use the word magical to describe the transformation. So really, there's two things I do. I do hypnotherapy, and I deal with some interesting clients. I turn down the less interesting ones. I guess that's why I sort of work with some quite interesting people. I've worked with a lot of comedians. I've worked with politicians. I've worked with actors, and I have. I don't really advertise, so I do a lot of word of mouth. So some people will go, "Oh, you should hear about this guy," and people generally find me and get in touch. But aside from the hypnotherapy, I also, in the daytime, when I'm not doing hypnotherapy, I work with. This is probably what you're alluding to. I do mental health support. So I actually do what's called psychosocial support. And I work with people who have, as an example, I've got 3 clients who are paranoid schizophrenic.
Mm-hmm.
And because of this, they're quite isolated. And so I really do the psychosocial support, emphasis on the social, which is just really helping them to achieve some semblance of a normal life. And I find myself really drawn to that. I actually I lost my younger brother about 11 years ago now. He would have been 52 just a couple of weeks ago, actually, but he didn't make it to 41. Unfortunately, he passed away when he was 40, and he suffered from paranoid schizophrenia. Should I say he lived with paranoid schizophrenia for most of his life. He was unmedicated for most of his life just because he didn't get diagnosed until he was in his early 30s, which was really kind of late. But we were from a very working class English background, and generally your GPs, I guess it's a bit like the country doctor in New Zealand. They're not the best quality that are drawn to the sort of smaller towns. And so their education wasn't really up to scratch. And so it was a long time before my younger brother was diagnosed. And consequently, you can call it synchronicity, you can call it coincidence, but I find myself working with people with that exact same condition. And I really enjoy it. I really enjoy hanging out with these people, maybe helping them with things that they would otherwise find difficult or overwhelming, and just really introducing them to my friends and my life. And I find it rewarding, although rewarding is a horrible word. I hate to use that word. Yeah. But I love it. Let's just say that I really enjoy the time that I spend with my clients, whether they're psychosocial support clients or whether they're hypnotherapy clients. And sometimes the two blur, the lines are blurred sometimes. And I think once you have learned hypnosis and once you use hypnotherapy with people, it becomes a way of communicating. So it's almost impossible not to speak to people and bear in mind or subconsciously use some of those therapy techniques that we've learned and we know work.
Yeah, that makes sense. How do you manage these two worlds? Because I mean, you started with really full on onto entertaining and into this world, and then you slowly, from what I understand, shifted or at least balanced in a different way. And so how does it work now?
Yeah. Again, I sort of fell into it by accident, really. I guess I I enjoyed both things. And I think if I speak passionately about both things, then that is where people, the work is drawn to me, really. So I'm very fortunate that I get to entertain people. When I lived in New Zealand, I did some fantastic Christmas parties, and I just felt like, wow, I'm so privileged to be invited along to do, Cricket New Zealand was one Christmas party that I did. And for those people who aren't in New Zealand, cricket in New Zealand, or in fact any kind of sport in New Zealand, is a big thing. And I worked at there's like tourist attractions in New Zealand, and they have people who work there from all over the world, and they have parties and get-togethers, and I've been chosen to be their entertainment, and I love that. I love that side of it. But I really believe that if that's all I was doing, I would get bored. I would think, oh, this is my job now.
Mhm.
And I touched on this a little bit at the conference, is that there's a lot of pressure on people to give up their day job and become a full-time hypnotherapist.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the wrong attitude to have, really. This is often a calling. And I've said the word accident, I've said the word coincidence, and I've said synchronicity. And I find that if you're drawn in a particular area, then why not go and do that thing? And it is possible to be drawn to several different things at the same time. So, don't limit yourself to just one thing. If you find yourself drawn to one thing, then go do it. And if another thing comes along, then make room to do that thing as well. So, people always say to me, how can you do both? How can you possibly do therapy and entertainment hypnosis? And all I say is, well, maybe I do entertainment hypnosis a bit differently to other people, or maybe it's not, what I do is not what you're expecting me to do. So, come along and see me do a show, and then come along and see how many people come up to me at the end of the show and ask me about therapy. A lot of people do. And I used to refer them to other people in the industry. And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to start referring people, and I'm going to make the time to actually see these people. Because I found by referring people that the referrals often didn't happen because those people were drawn to me as a hypnotist. They weren't necessarily drawn to hypnotherapy generally. So I find that by offering my contact details to people, they will follow through. So again, it's just one of those things that sort of happened and has been created for me.
And I think it's such a powerful point that you are touching here, because we are still very influenced by our parents and grandparents. The way, you find a job, stay on the job, and until it's the end of your career, and hopefully you're gonna have enough money to enjoy it before you're sick and you die. Exaggerate, but it's a little bit that. And it's true. I think there is more and more. Why do we have to have one job of 40 hours a week? Why not 2 or 3? You're right.
Absolutely. And the way I look at it, it's multiple sources of income, and that can't be a bad thing, really. I spent most of my teen years, I had such a strong desire to be a computer programmer.
Right.
And then I got there and I was a computer programmer. And then I'm like, is this it? It's fooled me so many times in my life, that sort of lifestyle where you go, right, now I'm going to be a comedian. And as we just said, for 6 or 7 years, that was all I did. Was I was a comedian running a comedy club. And then I'm like, there must be more to this. And I think that's the problem. If you have that give up your day job mentality, then no matter what you're going to do after that, that becomes your new day job.
True.
And people say, oh, it's great being your own boss. But in reality, everybody is your boss when you work for yourself. So you go from having one boss to having everybody as your boss. So, and also, I read somewhere, I think it was Zig Ziglar or someone said that when you become self-employed, you need to know that you're also an unpaid employee of the tax department. And the health department, because you're expected to do all that paperwork and all that admin as well. So, yeah, so, if you're going to have to do that kind of admin work, then you might as well be doing something that you enjoy. And if it's one thing, great. But if it's 4 or 5 things, then that's great too.
Yeah. It's really good to raise this point because yes, in self-employed, and I had the surprise as well. Wow, I was earning way more when I was working for someone else. But yeah, the joy it brings to my life, and yeah, it's what it is, what I love.
And that's the important thing, is that when you love something, it doesn't feel like work. When you really enjoy doing something, then it's you would happily do it every minute, every hour of the day.
Yeah, because if I start counting, crap. As you say, I'm loving it. I don't take it as a job, so yeah. But it's quite a good point to raise, because a lot of people think, oh wow, like this person is making this amount, but yeah, think about the work that is behind and no one sees.
Yes, yeah, and stop comparing yourself to other people as well, because it's fine to imitate people and to go, oh, I'd like to emulate what that person does, but nobody is such a good impressionist that they will actually do it exactly. So you always bring a little bit of yourself into it anyway, and and that will help you to discover other things too that maybe you could do and enjoy. Yeah.
I would love to go back a little bit into what happened, your dyspraxia, and maybe explaining what it is a little bit, because when people start, they have a passion or they have something that they want to start, they don't really know where to start or how to do it, and then maybe some people have ADHD or I don't know, all sorts of labels, and then we tend to stop ourselves on the label. And I think it's quite powerful to hear someone's story when you have like a label, but you actually go beyond that, and so if you can maybe talk about that, it'll be really good.
Well, the first thing to say is that I didn't know that I was growing up with dyspraxia. I knew that I was clumsy. I knew that I was uncoordinated. Through doing acting as a child and as a teenager, I always pretended to be sick when there was a dancing lesson involved, because I can't. Well, it's a really interesting condition, because in your head, you know exactly what you want your body to do. And you can memorize the moves, no problem at all. But when it comes to actually transferring those instructions from the brain to the body, there's some disconnect. Some really strong disconnect there. But my mother was great, because my mom just said, oh, well, you can't be great at everything. You're really good at some things, but you can't be good at everything. And I guess now I translate that to, instead of worrying about what other people can do that you can't do, it's much better to focus on the things that you can do that others can't. And that's been a bit of a mantra for me, really. I go and perform a show for people, and I know that most of the people that are watching can't do what I can do. Most of the people watching struggle with public speaking, let alone structuring a show and showing people some really interesting things and making them laugh and rounding off an evening of entertainment. As well as all the technical stuff behind that, the sound and lighting, which I like to do myself. Most people there can't do even one of those things. So it sounds arrogant, but it's not. It's just me focusing on what I can do that other people can't do. Because for some of my life, I might have focused on things, like I really wanted to be able to play football when I was a kid, and that didn't happen. The saddest thing for me was piano. I play violin and viola. In fact, there's a violin behind me. It's all blurred out this room, but there's the violin right behind me at the moment. But what prevented me going to music school was the fact that I couldn't play piano. Now, I can read music perfectly and I can sight read music, which means if you give me a sheet of music, I could pick up my violin and I could play that music straight away.
Mm.
I also play viola, which is a different clef. That's the alto clef. Sorry for the music nerds that are listening. I've got you listening now, but for everyone else, it's just music stuff. It's just technical, geeky music stuff. But basically, when we come to a piano, your left hand on the page is written with the bass clef. So that's the bottom part on the two lines of music. The top part is the right hand, which is the treble clef. I can sight read the treble clef. I can also sight read the bass clef. So I know exactly what my right hand has to do, and I know exactly what my left hand has to do, but I cannot coordinate the two. And I was given piano lessons as a child. I had a very, very good piano teacher who was highly recommended, and she was unable to help. She was just unable to teach me. So that was a bit of a sticking point for me. It still is, you know. I'd love to be able to sit down and play piano with more than one hand. That would be really good. But instead, I focused on the violin and viola because for some reason I could coordinate that. So really, yeah, it's just facts. You find something that you can do as a substitute for what you can't do. And consequently, that's how I got into the sort of magic that I do, because I couldn't coordinate myself. But as I say, I didn't know growing up that I had dyspraxia. It wasn't until my daughter was actually diagnosed. And somebody noticed her motor skills weren't quite what they should be. In fact, by the way that she ran or the way that she walked, there's all sorts of indicators. And I said, "Oh, it's rubbish. She's just uncoordinated like me." And they went, "Mm-hmm." And I said, "I mean, I was hopeless at sport and really clumsy and really awkward as a kid." And they're like, "Mm-hmm." And then I'm like, "Oh." So then I started to understand it and started to get it. And that was, my daughter would have been 7, so she's 22 now, coming up 23. So it's 15, 16 years ago that I actually went, okay, that explains the piano. That explains why I can ride and work on Vespers, but put me on a motorcycle where you've got a foot-operated gear, like, I can't do it, you know?
Wow.
So, yeah.
Fascinating, this thing, eh? Wow.
Yeah. It's and it manifests in different ways for different people. But for me, it's like a disconnect. So I can, and it always fools me. Somebody will say, "Do this," and I'll go, "Sure, I'll do that." And my brain tells me, "You're going to be able to do this." And then I try to do it, and I go, "Oh, that's right." And it causes quite a lot of anxiety, really, when you realize, well, okay, I can't do it. My brain told me I could do it, and you know that you can do it. That's the difficult thing. And then when you try to do it, there's like a disconnect between brain and body. Very interesting.
Yeah, and then there must be also, as you are saying, it's something powerful, because now you've been able to develop your brain in a different way with what you love, and that maybe if you've been able to play piano or soccer, you probably wouldn't have gone into what you are now.
No, maybe I wouldn't be such a good problem solver, but now I see things and I go, right, this is how I'm going to interpret it. This is how I'm going to do it. And consequently, I think I do things more originally than most people, because I don't necessarily see it the way that they do. But yeah, that's probably why I approach hypnosis completely differently. And consequently, I've been drawn at some very interesting things with my hypnosis. It's not just all stage shifts. There's I've done some really interesting stuff.
Yeah, and I guess also to be a mentalist, it's also some very specific, I don't know, gift that not everyone can have. It's how I perceive it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's only tricks, but
Yeah, I think there's a mixture, really, and I think it's also being able to see how those tricks work. I'm always amazed when magicians just follow the script from a trick that they've bought, because I will see a magic trick and I will instantly see the way that it works. So I automatically see the framework around the trick, and then I'll apply that framework to a trick that's very similar.
So that is quite special there.
Yeah. I remember I was a member of the Magic Society, and a magician showed me a trick, and we met monthly. And the following month, I'd worked out a way of doing this trick differently, and I showed him, and he said, "Wow, that's amazing. Who showed you that?" And I said, "You did. You did like a month ago." He goes, "No, I don't know that trick." And when I told him what trick it was based on, he still didn't really see it. So it always surprised me when magicians can't see the principle behind a trick, whereas I see the principle and I go, well, I see the principle that they've used. I'm not going to use it the way they did. I'm going to use it this way. And consequently, that'll be much more fooling and a much better presented trick. Yeah, well, maybe for me, it's a better presented trick. And sure enough, it works because people don't ever guess that it's based on a completely different trick.
Oh, that's amazing, because you are just illustrating the whole point that, you can have something that is different from anyone else, but if you go into something that you love and develop this skill, you will actually be way better than the average, and it's what you've just illustrated.
Yes, yeah. So I have, haven't I?
So, yeah. There is a question that I quite like asking to my guests, because like the whole idea is encouraging people to jump into their passion, into having a boring work, a boring job. It's not fun anymore. So what would you tell someone who has an idea of something that he's interested in, but he doesn't really know when or how to start? What would you tell this person?
I just say, look, it's just break it down. Break it down. It's like the how do you eat an elephant? And the answer is one little bite at a time. And that's a really good way to approach goals. You've got a goal, and it's fine to have that goal, but maybe try and achieve a little tiny piece of that goal, maybe every week, every day if you can manage. It doesn't matter what you do towards achieving that goal as long as you do something. And it can be a very small thing. Like it can be as simple as, oh, that's right, I've got a friend that works in voiceover. So I'll write that name down on a piece of paper. Okay. That is a little tiny nibble of the elephant, but it's better than not even starting to eat it. So each day do something towards that goal, or each week or each month, whatever you can manage, just try and do a little bit. And before you know it, you end up achieving that goal. And it's also having it in mind. It's a bit of a cliche now, but everything starts with a thought.
Yeah.
Everything man-made around you started as an idea in somebody's head. And they managed to make that thing a reality. Now, we don't know the stories behind all of those things, but what we do know is that it started as a thought in somebody's head. So if you've got a thought in your head, then how can you make it real? How can you make that thing a reality? And we're hypnotists. We should be good at that thing, because that's what we do, is we make people's thoughts become their reality. So how can you make your own thought become your reality? And there's lots of different ways of achieving it, but my biggest goal would be a little at a time.
Yeah.
The other thing is to pay attention to things you can do at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than mainly write somebody's name down, think, okay, what else am I doing? I could talk to this person and he could tell me some people's names, but at the same time, in the same day, I can talk to those other people that he tells me about. And then you start to look at things that you can do. And I used to work as a project manager for a time as well. And I found project management was a great way of achieving goals, because that's what it is. It's a bunch of tasks that you have to do on your way to achieving a goal. So if you're going to build a house, it's no point thinking about how you're going to build the roof if you haven't put the walls up. So that's what we call a dependency. So the roof is dependent upon the walls being in place. And with our own lives and with our own goals, we can see things that we need to do before something else will fall into place. And often by setting those foundations of more building metaphors, but by building those walls and setting those foundations, you'll find that the roof will easily fit into place. It's not as hard as you thought it was in the first place, because you've actually worked towards that goal. Yeah, I'm mixing my metaphors a lot here, but you get what I mean? So it's really
I do. Yeah.
a little at a time, things that you can do at the same time, and then also things that are dependent upon other things. So you need to work all those things out. Because otherwise, like they say, otherwise it's not a goal, it's a dream.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure that that dream is the goal, and a goal has, consequences, and it certainly has requirements to achieve it.
I like this metaphor. I love metaphors, and I can even see even further the foundation, but the foundation not of the wall, like the base, as like the mindset. As you say, like the first thing that comes is an idea, but if we have the mindset that is set to the glass half empty, well, the walls won't be really strong and steady. But if we have this mindset of, well, I do believe in myself and all that, and then I'm gonna have that, and then yeah,
Absolutely. Just something else just sprang to mind. There's been a lot of talk about AI and how we can use AI to actually assist us. And what you're talking about there in metaphors is there's actually great ways that AI can assist us. So I've got a client who has dementia, and I looked up what metaphors can we use with somebody to clear the neural pathways and to help them maybe cope with their dementia. And the OpenAI model that I used came up with all these wonderful metaphors. And I thought, well, there you go. That's actually a good use of AI. We're not asking it to write us a script. We're just saying, what sort of metaphors could I use with this person?
I really love that you're opening this subject, because I'm passionate about AI, and I don't see it in a negative way. But it's not bad. I would love to hear what you're thinking of how AI will shape or reshape the hypnotherapy industry within the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I think some people will misuse it. I think they will, in the same way that some people buy a book of scripts and then never deviate from the scripts.
Yeah.
So I think there's always going to be a number of people that will go, oh, AI is the answer to everything, so I will use AI to write my sessions for me. And the danger there is that we're not truly client focused, because we need to work on what's presented in front of us. So we need to focus on the client and the client's outcomes. And then people will say, but you can feed the client's outcomes into a large language model and it will come up with some solutions for you. But people change and people fluctuate, and also people get better. People improve. And if we're working with people in the right way, then people do improve in front of us. So we need to be dynamic enough to recognize when people have experienced changes. And unfortunately, it goes the other way too. People don't improve. People get worse. And if we're still stuck on not recognizing that that's happened and not really working with what's in front of us, then I think AI's got a long way to go before it's going to be acceptable for us to have it as a third person in the room. And when we get to the stage where it's the third person in the room and the client can input into it as well as you drawing from it, then I think that there's a use for it. Aside from that, then what I just described about using it to go, hey, I'm drawing a mental block. I've got this person. He's a fisherman. He wants to quit smoking. What can I use with him to help him? Give me some metaphors that I could use that he would he would identify with that will just slip into his subconscious without any conscious involvement. And doing that sort of thing, I think there really is a use for us to use AI independently of the client. But I can see the day where maybe it's the third entity in the room, and the client can also feel comfortable to discuss with AI, just as the therapist can too. And that's when I think it will really come into its own. And I don't think we're that far away from that.
Yeah, it is for sure such an interesting subject. I see it.
And I used to be an IT person.
Yeah. Sure, we need another 2 hours to talk about that. What I would love to know now a little bit about what are your projects? What is coming up for you? Because now you are in Aussie and you are, we are coming close to Christmas, and when it's going to come out, it will be not long before Christmas. So yeah, what's happening in your world?
So inevitably, I will be doing Christmas shows. Yeah, I'm still sort of finding my feet in Australia. You mentioned earlier, I've been here just over a year, so really that's no time at all. I was very fortunate to do the Fringe Festival, but what I did at the Fringe Festival, instead of hypnotizing volunteers from the audience, which is what happens in a traditional stage hypnosis show, certainly the ones that I do, what I did instead was I got performers from the Fringe, and I hypnotized them in front of a live audience. And these were people I hadn't met before. I literally met them on the night. Actually, I had 9 people, and one of them I'd met before, but the other 8 I didn't even know very much about them other than what they did, and they were mostly comedians, stand-up comedians.
Yeah.
And so I said to them, look, the only thing I will say is please don't use these words. It's not working or anything similar to that, because you don't know what I'm trying to achieve. So let's just let whatever happens happen and see what kind of show we get out of it. And that was quite nerve-wracking for me to do that in front of an audience, but I like to challenge myself in that way. And to be honest, Christmas shows where I do footy clubs or, work social clubs, they're going to seem pretty boring, shall I say, or pretty easy compared to what I did for the Fringe Festival. So I'm trying to work on a way that I can incorporate some more challenging stuff into my shows. It's that change thing again. It's that getting bored easily and trying to sort of step up the game a little. So that's what I'm working on at the moment is sort of writing a new Christmas show, if you like, or a new corporate show. Projects that I've done in the past, which have fallen into my lap. I did an outdoor arts festival in New Zealand, in Christchurch. It's called the Scape Festival. And an artist asked me if I would be able to help her with the project. And the project was that she wanted to have people talk to plants.
Oh.
And these were people that were botanists or horticulturalists. They use plants in their work, and she wanted them to be able to communicate with the plants. And she wanted to write the questions as the artist, and then I was to interview the plant, but using the person as a conduit for the interview. And so that's what we did. We hypnotized the botanist or the horticulturalist, and then we talked to the plants.
That's amazing. That was really
fun. So much fun. And we got arts funding for it. And that is the first time worldwide that hypnotism has actually received funding from a government body, arts funding from a government body. Because there's always been this, is it an art? Is it, and I can safely say, yes, it is. So, I think Jonathan Chase, who you may or may not have known, he did an Edinburgh Fringe show, and he also got arts funding, but that was about a year and a half, couple of years later.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's happened at least twice. So do apply for arts funding if you can.
Could you send me the link for that?
What's that, sorry?
Did you send me the link for that so I can put it in the show notes?
Oh, sure, I will do. Yeah, I can send you Jonathan's stuff. Jonathan's one of those people that I count as a mentor. I was doing it long before I actually spoke to him, but he was one of those people that was very supportive of what I was doing. And so, it's definitely worth mentioning him. I'll send you some links. Yeah, and I'll send you links to the arts project as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
I also did, during COVID, I actually hypnotized on live television, socially distanced from the presenters. So I had to work out ways that I was going to use inductions by being distanced from them. And so, and a lot of people don't even notice that that's actually what's going on. We are distanced from each other. And that was live television. So again, no pressure, Reg.
Yeah, you are pushing yourself.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
I
I enjoy it, and I find, like a lot of people, when the stakes are high, you find that that's often when you perform at your best, and that's something that we can also carry forward for our clients. A lot of people need that urgency, they need that kind of challenge, they need to be outside of their comfort zone in order to make changes happen. And I feel like I'm setting a good example by doing these challenging things.
So I guess, if you are doing all that, I'm sure some new opportunity will come. So if people want to follow you and making sure that they don't miss out into any amazing new adventure, how they can contact you?
I'm just going to say I'm terrible at social media. You will find all this stuff. CleverKlutz, so CleverKlutz, CleverKlutz. That's what I am on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube. Although you will also find, if you Google Reg the hypnotist, you'll find my stuff. You'll find my stuff, whether you do Google videos or whatever it is that you want to Google, you will find me online.
Perfect. Yeah, and I will add that in the show notes, so they're just going to be able to click and it should be all good.
Yeah. So the CleverKlutz thing is, again, sort of because of the dyspraxia. So that was, born clumsy and growing clever. And again, there's a message in that, really, is that, I am a klutz. I'm still clumsy. I still break things all of the time, but I find clever ways of dealing with that.
Well, the good thing is that you replace them with new stuff.
Yes. Oh, and I'm going to be in New Zealand in March. I've just found out.
At the conference.
I will be at the Auckland conference in March.
Well, any hypnotist listening to that, another reason to come to this one. I'll be there as well, and I can't wait to hear you. Are you going to be a speaker, or are you going to be just?
Yep. So I hope I'm not stepping on any toes here. I don't know when your podcast comes out, but I'm sure it'll be fine. I am going to be a speaker at a conference, and I'm also doing some pre-conference training. Mm-hmm. So I'm doing a day of training before the conference, and then I will be a speaker during the conference too. But I'll be there.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, no, I think I've seen Justin. So she's the person doing the whole New Zealand one, and and she's on my list. I need to, next year I will interview her. Hopefully she will say yes.
Justin's great. Yeah, you've got to get Justine on your question.
Sure. And Trish.
Yeah. The way she's transformed the Hypnosis New Zealand is incredible. Yeah.
Awesome. Reg, what is your gift?
Wow. Problem solving, but also humor. I think part of the altered perspective is that I always see the funny side of things, and sometimes I have to keep quiet because sometimes I see the funny side of things, and it's not always appropriate to speak out and express the funny side of something. So, I have to put my brain into gear sometimes, because the automatic response is often a funny response. So yeah, I have to be a bit careful with that. So is it a gift or is it a curse?
Usually when messages are given with a bit of humor, they're usually more well received though. Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully. Maybe not. Yeah, I see the funny side in things, and I think if I did have a gift, it would be that perspective, to see a different perspective to other people. I've always seen myself as somebody that can kind of like hover over a situation and see the big picture. So I'm a sort of bigger picture person. And as part of that, I'll see the very edges of the picture as well as what most people focus on. I will see other things.
Incredible. Yeah. It's quite interesting, especially with the people that you're working with. This schizophrenia is also very focused on one little aspect. So yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes it's good to have somebody with a broader understanding.
And my last question I like also asking is there any question that I haven't asked and I should have asked you?
No, I think you probably covered most things. We should probably mention Gil Boyne, who is another hypnotist who taught me a lot. Hypnothoughts Live is the conference that happens in Las Vegas. That originally was just an online forum called Hypnothoughts that Scott Sandland started. And as part of that, we did something online called the Global Hypnosis Summit. Again, I think this was around 2008, 2009, which was just online, and I did the first one. And then I think I did the second one too. And then it became a live event, and I've never got myself over to Vegas, but maybe one day.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Reg. That was a pleasure to have you on board today. And we're going to put all the beautiful link and the people that you talked about into the show notes so people can have a wonder and have a look at all that.
Fantastic. I look forward to it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lily. Have a good day.
Bye. I hope this interview inspired you toward your goals. And remember, one step at a time. Every little step that you are taking forward is one step closer to your dream life. And if you want to go even further, I have created this 8 weeks program where together we are diving deep into your inner core beliefs, and we are releasing all the beliefs that are no longer needed and recreating new empowered ones. At the end of the 8 weeks, you will feel a new person, empowered, stronger, lighter, and ready to step into your new journey. In the show notes, there is a link that will bring you to a questionnaire that will bring you clarity on what needs to be worked on. And all the best for you to find and follow your true passion.